It is now 496 days that Hamas is holding hostages in captivity inside Gaza. 76 hostages remain in the terror dungeons, some alive, others not. Hello everyone, I'm Westropp-Evans, and today is February 13th, 2025. This is the live daily briefing of the Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's Office. Israel is hoping Hamas releases the hostages, but is readying for war if Hamas keeps them. If Hamas does not return our hostages by Saturday noon, the ceasefire will end and the IDF will return to intense fighting until Hamas is finally defeated. These were the words of Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who announced this after Hamas said that it will not release any more hostages. Thousands of IDF troops are readying to continue war against Hamas monsters. And this was meant to be the fourth week of the hostage ransom deal. 3 hostages were scheduled to be released this Saturday, traded for murderers. 6 hostages were scheduled to be released next week, together with the bodies of 8 murdered hostages, also traded for those who would murder them given the opportunity. Now, even if that happens, Hamas will still hold around 65 hostages in their dungeons. And over 12,000 trucks carrying humanitarian aid have entered Gaza during the hostage ransom deal. That's over the last few weeks alone. These trucks carry food, water, fuel, gas, medicine, tents, and more in accordance with the deal that Israel made with Hamas. And what does Hamas do? Well, Hamas instead plays games to stay in power at the cost of the hostages and the civilians inside Gaza. Every day that Hamas plays games is another day of torture for the hostages that they hold. And every day that Hamas plays games is a day that it is clear that Hamas, who vowed to do October 7th again and again, given the opportunity, can never be our neighbors again. Now, Hamas announced that it was keeping the hostages as the US and Israeli leaders were meeting. US President Donald Trump said that if all the Gaza hostages aren't returned by Saturday at 12 p.m., I would say cancel the ceasefire, let all hell break loose. Well, in response to President Trump's words, here's what I would say. Direct your blame everywhere that it belongs, including Hamas's patrons in Qatar and Turkey. Both of those countries host Hamas leaders. And despite this, Qatar retains status as a major non-NATO ally and hosts massive US bases. Turkey, similarly, remains a NATO member and also hosts US bases. The US has tremendous leverage over both Qatar and Turkey. Qatar and Turkey have tremendous leverage over Hamas. So if Hamas is keeping the hostages, it's because its patrons have told it to do so. So if the US tells Qatar and Turkey to release the hostages, Hamas will be forced to release the hostages. All right, let's take some questions from our audience watching live on social media.
Thank you, Asher. Our first question comes from Rachel on Instagram. What do Israelis think about President Trump's proposed all hell breaks loose plan if the hostages are not returned by 12 p.m. on Saturday?
Well, Rachel, Israel is not a monolith. There's a diversity of opinions, first and foremost, when we talk about any response to actions taking place, whether outside Israel or within. So we need to be very clear about that. But, frankly, the first thought that comes to most people's minds here are, one, thinking about the future of the hostages. Of course, they're always paramount and the top of everyone's mind here, but also thinking about all those who would have to be forced to go back to fighting. Israel does not want to have to continue this war. The IDF is ready should it need to, but it does not want to have to continue this war. The people of Israel do not want to continue this war that Hamas started on October 7th, 2023, with their heinous atrocities. We want our hostages back. We want to be able to return to peace and stability and real peace, not just a piece of paper. This is a sort of sustainable future that Israel wants. And when we hear the words of President Trump, while the support is appreciated, certainly for Israel and the cause of the Israeli people, at the end of the day, the idea of all hell breaking loose is something that we do not want to have to deal with here in the Middle East, or frankly, anyone should have to deal with anywhere around the world.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Laura on Instagram. Do we know any details of a possible phase 2 of the ceasefire deal?
Laura, there were details sketched out in the initial elements of the ceasefire. This would include elements such as returning the remaining hostages. Those would be the men that are deemed to be healthy and of fighting age that are being held, around 66 hostages in various states, whether they be live, dead, sick, ill, or whatever it may be. And it would be Israel withdrawing further from Gaza. But this is the key element here and one of the key sticking points, not to let Hamas go back in control. And these elements are all meant to be negotiated throughout the course of phase 1. But as we see here, the situation we stand at the moment, Hamas is not even willing to execute phase 1 as was intended. They are trying to live in a situation where they get concessions from Israel. They get Israel to move out of Gaza, to give it back, hand it back control, and yet to still try and keep hostages as some sort of sick insurance policy for them and theirs, so that they can hide in between them and use them as human shields while they launch heinous attacks against Israel and the Israeli people. This has been the goal of Hamas the whole time. As I've said many times before, but it bears saying again, we're making a deal with the devil here, and the devil certainly does not play fair.
Thank you. Our final question comes from YouTube. Why is the prisoner exchange for captive Israelis in Gaza so outrageously disproportionate, with most of the released Palestinians being terrorists and murderers?
Frankly, it's an important question, and it's a sick situation that Israel finds itself in. The fact of this matter is that Israel cares above and beyond all about getting our hostages back, about getting these people returned back to their homes, back to their lives, back to their loved ones for the sake of the country. And unfortunately, our enemies understand this, and they use this sort of sick leverage to try and take advantage of Israel in exchange hostages that were kidnapped from their beds at gunpoint in exchange for prisoners, murderers, terrorists and their ilk that Israel is being forced to return back into others' hands, where they may continue to enact atrocities in the future if they would so be inclined. This is the sort of heinous situation that Israel finds itself in, but unfortunately, this is the reality on the ground. These situations are messy, and as we've said before, and as I'd like to reiterate, the patrons of Hamas, those that provided support, that provided funding, that provide them legitimacy on the international stage. In particular, we can talk about Qatar, Turkey, and Iran. They are given carte blanche around the world to act freely and with impunity in order so that they can support Hamas and they can give it credibility and give it a sense of strength and power. They can be in these negotiating positions where they think they have power, despite having been summarily beaten by Israel and the IDF. Unfortunately, this is the reality we live in. It's a messy region. It's a messy time. And we just want our hostages back. All right. Well, that is all that we have time for today. I want to thank you so much for tuning in and to say a Shabbat Shalom. We will be back at 3 p.m. Israel time on Sunday and 8 a.m. on the East Coast. Thank you so much for watching. Again, a Shabbat Shalom. I've been Westropp-Evans. Thanks for being with us.